The 172nd edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Eight up freehand, King rights the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glove. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions. The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you as always. Tonight we are in person to recap what's feeling like a big 75-65 road win for Carolina at Pittsburgh. Carolina, of course, last week got two major wins at home, beating NC State and Wake Forest. The challenge was then to kind of take that momentum that they built, apply that on the road, and get a big-time win against a Pittsburgh team that came in 8-3 overall. They matched up pretty well with Carolina. You felt like Justin Champagnie, maybe the ACC player of the year as of right now. They've got some really good guards, and they beat Carolina twice a year ago. And Carolina came out, and, I mean, it wasn't the complete effort we saw on Saturday against NC State because they didn't shoot the ball well from three. They missed half their foul shots, turned the ball over 13 times. But this is the best Carolina has looked on the road in ACC play.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's without a doubt. Some of their other road games so far this year, they have not looked great. Although, remember the last time they were on the road, they took a step forward against Florida State. They just came up short in that game. But, yeah, no, this was a big showing for Carolina to come out against a team in Pittsburgh that a lot of people felt have been putting together a lot of momentum. We talked about it that we felt they were going to come in pretty motivated off a loss to a Wake Forest team that was winless in conference. But, you know, again, when you go through the ACC, especially this year, you know you're going to have those types of losses that will occasionally pop up. And, you know, look, Pittsburgh did everything they could to stick around in this game. Carolina helped them out a lot with some of the mistakes that they made at times. But again, they did a really good job of taking care of the basketball for the most part. They didn't turn the ball over a whole lot. It was just some other things, you know, strategically on the defensive end that we saw, which we'll get into. And, of course, later in that first half, they struggled a little bit on the defensive glass. Pittsburgh allowed themselves to get some second chance opportunities, and that allowed them to stay in the game before halftime. But Carolina really is starting to find their footing when it comes to these types of physical, down-to-the-wire games against veteran teams. This Pittsburgh team isn't as veteran as some of the other teams they faced so far this year. But you have to think that this was probably the first or second game in ACC play. Carolina probably would have lost this game. So you're seeing the growth from this team as a whole just continue. And again, I think now, you know, and we'll probably talk about this here in a minute or potentially right after I finish up this comment, I think, like we said, this game really shows that at this point, Carolina is in that conversation with Virginia and Florida State, where if enough things were to go right, if they could win enough games and have a couple, you know, have some help above them, they could potentially come away with an ACC regular season title.
Yeah, they've definitely put their name in the conversation, and I think after the way they started ACC play going 0-2, and even when they got their first couple ACC wins, whether it was against Notre Dame, against Miami, where they were pretty much needing buzzer beaters and last-second defensive stops to get wins, you wouldn't have thought that. But the season really turned around when they played Syracuse at home. Their offense since then has been clicking ever since that game, and then the defense is starting to get back into form to what it was at the beginning of the year in terms of being able to, hold teams to poor shooting nights. And tonight, Carolina's offense, even though they only scored 75 points, shot 52% from the field, 32 of 61, only 4 of 17 from three, but they played bully ball. And this team is at its best when it's playing inside out. Armando Bacot cemented his name as the best player on this team and maybe put his name in the ACC Player of the Year running with a 21-point, 10-rebound performance on 8 of 10 shooting. And then Garrison Brooks, who stayed in the starting lineup after a pretty poor performance on Saturday, after he only scored 4 points and fouled out, 16 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 6 rebounds. When Carolina is getting that kind of production from those two guys, and you add in what Day'Ron Sharp's going to give you, Carolina's going to be a tough team to beat moving forward. And I know this is an era where we want to play, on the perimeter. We want to jack up a bunch of threes. Carolina's built to play through their bigs, through in the painted area as they outscored Pittsburgh 48-32. And that's the recipe and the formula for this team. When they get the perimeter shooting, that's just a bonus because there's not a team in this conference and there's not a team in the country that can match Carolina's size, length, athleticism, and depth in the post, which is why Roy Williams is adamant that they need to get back to playing inside out. They've done that the last 2 games. That's why they've got 2 pretty big wins.
I mean, look, you have 48 points in the paint, and
you only scored 75.
I mean, but yeah, and that's the thing is that, when you would put it inside, it wasn't like they were showing you resistance and your guys were still somehow coming out with points or whatever. You haven't seen a team that's matched up with you on the defensive end. So at this point, look, I understand that you think that, but some people think that the modern era of basketball is the way that you're ultimately going to win. I mean, you can think that all you want. Carolina's tried to do that. And, I mean, let's be really honest. Even their last national championship team was not built that way.
Nope.
You had 2 traditional bigs in Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks. They had some success when they tried to play small ball in 2019 with Luke May, Cam Johnson, Kobe White leading their team. But ultimately, when they got into the tournament, they failed out. This is not a good enough team to win games shooting from the outside. Now, they're getting there, and that's a great sign. That's something that you should be very encouraged about. But, I mean, Corey Alexander, the long-winded Corey Alexander, he said it best. This is where Carolina is going to continue to win games this year. When you score over half your points in the paint in a modern basketball game, that's when you know that you're a good team. And, I mean, again, they're once again one of the best rebounding teams in the country again this season. And, that just shows you how dominant these guys are. And I've said it the last couple of previews. You need 2 of these guys to step up and play well. Tonight, once again, 2 guys stepped up and played well. What happened? You won.
Yeah.
They need to keep doing that. Bacot, fantastic again. I really hope that he can just keep this up because this is going to be the proof for people that say, well, we need to continue to recruit one and dones. No, these are the types of guys that you want, guys that can grow in this system because look at the growth of Armando Bacot as a freshman to now as a sophomore. He is turning into a player that, like you said, he could definitely be your go-to guy for the rest of the season. Put the ball in the post, let Armando Bacot do what he does. He's going to have his moments. He's not quite as consistent as someone probably like yet. But, I mean, yeah, he's a legitimate ACC Player of the Year candidate. Now, personally, I think that having seen Champagnie in person, that's probably your ACC Player of the Year. That kid's a stud. I mean, he can do it from anywhere on the court, too. I mean, this guy is a stretch 4 who can take it to the basket. And, I mean, he really had a pretty solid game in this one as well. But, I mean, it was also huge seeing Garrison Brooks step up in this game, play the way that he did. Pittsburgh, for some reason, decided to try to throw a zone at him. Best of luck. That's where Garrison likes to thrive. But, yeah, I think it just continues to show these last few games that the way that you're going to win these games is with your big men. You're going to get help from the guys on the outside. You need your freshman guards to play well. That's true. But if you're going to win games on the offensive end, your strategy needs to still be put the ball inside, bully people, and find a way to win these games.
Yeah, and I don't think – and there's nothing wrong with that. I think having the option to play small, I think if you look at the guys that Carolina has on the roster now and the guys that are coming in, you'll have that option. But they continue to prove that they can still win playing their style of basketball because no other team plays that style. And so as long as you can hold up defensively, which Carolina was able to do that tonight, holding Pitt to just 42% from the field, and they kept them off the glass, then you'll live with playing with a more with two bigs and putting them out there on the perimeter. Now, I thought Carolina's defense tonight, statistically, it looks good. I thought they got away with a lot of bad double teams. They just had a lot of lazy plays that Pittsburgh just didn't finish, as they were only 10 of 27 on layup attempts. That's not good enough to win games in the ACC. But on the flip side, you got to look at that was Carolina's size and their length that was affecting their plays at the rim. But that's the struggle is when you have the two bigs is how you're going to play defense with the way most of these teams want to play. You're going to see it next week when you go to Duke and some other teams down the line in conference play. But Carolina is still at its best, especially with as young as they are in the backcourt when they're playing through Garrison Brooks. I think Armando Bacot is this team's best player. He is their first option, and he should be moving forward. And you know what you're going to get from Day'Ron Sharpe in terms of just energy and effort. And he got 6 points and 7 rebounds because of that. Because of his energy and his effort, he had a nice turnaround jump shot that he hit, but then he left some bunnies out there as well. So Carolina just needs to, stay committed. And I think the fan base, I think we just get so frustrated when you're losing. That's why we want to say we're losing, is because we play this old style of basketball and, you got to adjust. No, you don't. You just need your kids to play better and let your kids grow up and learn how to play in this league and win in this league. And this is what's happening. Because, look, even though Love only had 8 points and 3 of 10 shooting, and RJ Davis only had 5 points and 2 of 7 shooting, they still made plays that really affected the outcome of this game.
Well, look, it's not always going to be a step-by-step process. They are not always going to take another step forward. That's not how growing works, especially in sports. You're going to have moments where, okay, you're not going to perform as well as the last game. Caleb Love fouled out tonight. That's part of it. He's going to learn. Like you said, on the defensive end, those were the guys that were really struggling too, were some of the freshmen that were just kind of scrambling around. We saw it with Kerwin Walton. But we know that, look, going into the season, this was not a traditional offseason. I hate to go back to that as often as I do. But in this case, I think that it's important because the staff wasn't able to learn as much about these guys coming in as they would other freshman classes.
Well, and the guys didn't learn a lot about themselves. They weren't comfortable when they stepped out on the court in mid-October to get ready for the season.
So when you go into this upcoming offseason, you're going to know a lot about these guys' strengths and weaknesses and what you can work on for these guys to get better. In other years, there's sometimes where you can see that early on in camp and you can point that stuff out and get it fixed. This year, you really didn't have time to do that. And especially with the amount of guys that you knew were going to have to play big roles too, you needed to just take what they could give you. Hey, you got to be able to capitalize on what you can give us. And we'll find a way to sort of navigate through your weaknesses, and we'll figure it out once we, get another year with you guys. That's the thing that I think people have to realize, is that these guys are going to get better. But, yeah, I'm with you. There were a lot of defensive lapses tonight. One of the things that we noticed was that they were switching every chance they had, they were switching. I'm not really getting that because you got so many different mismatches that hurt you at times. And you're right. Pittsburgh, they bailed you out a couple of times because there were some really bad shots that they threw up. There were some opportunities that they had to finish shots and they didn't go down. I think that, Carolina definitely got some breaks. But look, this is the thing. When you're starting to play well like this, those breaks are going to go your way. Last year, those breaks wouldn't have gone your way. They would have found a way to, finish those opportunities. But this year, you can see that there's more confidence in this team, and that's why things are starting to break Carolina's way. And that's the exciting part about it. This team is still growing, but at the same time, this is a blue blood that's growing. There's a reason why they're a blue blood. Wins are demanded, and we're starting to see that happen now. But again, it's not a completely linear process.